Hiya, I'm Dan, a professional animator who's really into video games, and this is Video Game Animation Study, and I can hear all 5 of you finally give a sigh of relief I'm covering this gorgeous, beautiful game. This was a hotly requested video along with Metal Slug, and with the sequel Silk Song around the corner, now seems like a good time to dive into this lovely little game. It took me ages to really get into this game. The first time was a fail. I didn't get the map system and I kept dying, and I'm not a huge fan of the Dark Souls recover your stuff when you die element. And then I came back to it a year later and understood it a bit more and really got into it. Then I couldn't do Hornet and kept dying. And then I came back to it a third time, and now I just can't play it enough. The game balances lots of different things. An intriguing deep lore contrasted with cute simple art, dark shadows and beautiful bright palettes, a small quiet character with a variety of devastating abilities. We're here to look at the animation of Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight began life as a game jam entry for Ludum Dare by Ari Gibson and William Pellin, 2 game devs based in Australia before they became Team Cherry. It was a top-down action game requiring the player to fight off enemy insects to eat food before they die, and it's fairly simple, consisting of the familiar character and art style. The 2 decided to expand it further into a full game we now know as Hollow Knight, and this is where the magic would really begin to pan out. According to Ari, the visual goal of development was to keep it simple. He'd draw on paper and then scan into a computer and clean up, and add these elements into the game world. You can feel this handcrafted love in all of the character designs in the game, and this also comes through in the animation, which we'll get to. William says that creating a simple character like the knight, particularly having a cloak to hide his arms, allowed more time for development on the game map and general design. What's curious is that the animation for our empty knight himself is the same as it was in Hungry Knight, but it's the character control that's changed. Switching from top-down to side-scroller meant that the duo had to get 2 particular things spot on for a great experience: running and jumping. The jump was what they wanted to nail first, taking inspiration from the tight control scheme from games like Mega Man X, in being able to control your character mid-air to pixel-perfect precision. The running action became an extension of this design philosophy, and so everything else followed. So, how does all this feed into the animation? Any great game animator or great game dev will likely tell you that the animation needs to serve the gameplay. The form needs to serve the function. Certain animation principles need to be lessened or even removed in place of a more clear, responsive action. For instance, when you swing your nail, or sword, the action happens immediately, consisting of one tiny frame of anticipation, with the next frame being the full arc of the swing. The bright smear, which represents the swing, is filling in the gaps of what you didn't see. And this works from all angles too. It needs to be this quick so you can feel in control. But while the form is serving the function, the form doesn't have to be lifeless, like your knight's eyes. Something that will also greatly affect how you approach your animation is your character design. Most characters here are rounded with short limbs, and most have cold, dead eyes. How can you be expressive with such restrictive traits? And with such minimal animation on display, it means you can't hide those frames. You have to make the most with what you have, and this is what Hollow Knight excels at. Let's look at running and jumping to start. They too are simple, basic actions, but there's tiny little moments of charm. Whenever you start running, you do this slight little lean into the direction you go, like a little indication of effort. Your actual horizontal travelling speed is constant, so as not to mess up the tight gameplay, but just that little addition gives your avatar a little more life, ironically. Also, you have a teeny turning animation if you start running the opposite way you're facing, which isn't common in many games, but I get a feeling we'll start seeing it more. The running animation is subtly versatile too. If you stop running while you're in that first leaning part, you'll gradually straighten back up to your starting pose. Whereas if you stop while you've been running for a while, you're already kind of in that pose, so it all lines up again. What I love with the jumping, aside from the lovely little follow-through animations which you get to enjoy throughout the whole motion, is the dust that follows your jump arc. This is where the animation in Hollow Knight gets really interesting. It's made up of both hand-drawn frames and more physics-based generated particle animation. I'll get more into this later, but let's focus on the jump for now. You might be quick to assume that there's two dust animations for when you jump, one for straight up and one for when you jump when running. But upon closer inspection, you'll see that the dust follows your exact path. And this is because the dust trail is a generated effect in Unity. Oh yeah, this 2D game is layered in 3D, which is why the parallax looks so good. Anyway, this little addition to your jump arc does a couple of things. It keeps in mind that the paths are old and dusty, that your exploration consists of stumbling through forgotten hubs, and it also cements your character as a part of the world, that while your character is a lower frame rate 2D drawing, it still belongs in this environment and can interact with it. In fact, you'll find this anywhere you go in the game. The particle effects are present in every step you take, such as leaves getting disturbed during green path or pollen in fungal wastes. The game blends these two approaches together seamlessly. The rain in City of Tears is generated animation from the game engine, but the water pouring over the edges is hand-drawn. Some of the hanging foliage in Green Path responds with hand-drawn animation when you walk past it, and some of the foliage on the ground reacts with physics animation when you walk past it. The pollen mushrooms in fungal wastes react with nice bouncy 2D frames, but the pollen itself that puffs out is generated. When some enemies are destroyed, particles will explode out, but when those particles hit the floor, the reaction is a hand-drawn splash. Flying monsters that spew out orange infection blends the 2D character with particle effects. Electrified nodes use both a 2D element and a generated element. Wandering through infected areas shows us cute little 2D twitches from the globs in the background. Lakes that boil in 60 frames per second but spit out fumes at a lower hand-drawn frame rate. The marriage of hand-drawn 2D and particle generation shouldn't really go together, but this is what gives the game its beautifully unique style and texture. Now, 2D and generation isn't new. I've already covered games like Dust Force and Grease, which focus more on the 2D side than particle generation, but Hollow Knight seems to blend these two approaches so much more confidently, and it seems to mesh well with the overall themes, that emptiness can still be beautiful. The animation in Hollow Knight generally is fairly simple. There's nothing extravagant, there's nothing particularly special, but it's consistent and confident. Any character you interact with is always rendered with a thick black outline, bold colours, and tends to move with restraint. Enemies tend to have more anticipation to aid in telegraphing attacks, so you get lots of nice, striking battle animations, whereas NPCs tend to have more thoughtful staging, like this lovely jubbly character, your map maker who you can hear humming to himself in the area, the bank teller, the fast travel stag, and many, many others. They all tend to look at you when you speak to them or move past them too, which is a really nice, thoughtful touch. Your knight itself has some cute little moments, like actually holding the map and looking at it when you bring it up in-game, and waking up from sitting in a daze at the bench. Just lovely little, thoughtful pieces of acting. Hornet, like many of the bosses, has some great dynamic animation. I've mentioned in previous videos that occasionally less is more, and the gentle, simple animation philosophy of Hollow Knight still translates nicely into Hornet's attack animation, such as her dress that flows behind the various anticipating moves she performs. Her stance is much more confident than our characters, standing with a straight back. I love that her weapon is controlled with a thread of sorts. Silk, you could say, but you only really see the silk at certain points in the attack. Again, harking back to the keep it simple design. It'll be very interesting to see how Hornet's animations transfer over to her own game, if they'll be kept the same, altered to accommodate the gameplay, etc. Who knows, maybe I'll make a video comparing the differences. So, Hollow Knight's animation is simple but confident. It's poignant and somber. It achieves lots with a little. It marries together heartfelt hand-drawn animation with beautiful generated physics movement. It keeps it simple, which contrasts its tough gameplay and deep lore. Hollow Knight's animation is thoughtful. Some stray thoughts before we sign off. I'm in love with the various fog and smoke effects in all the different areas. Unity's handling of such effects is really nice, and it makes each area feel much more alive. And not really an animation thing, but the dynamic lighting and colouring throughout is simply breathtaking. It's just one more thing that helps tie together the 2D hand-drawn elements with the more digital elements. I really like how when you kill an enemy, its shell remains on the floor, it doesn't disappear. It's unsettling, it makes you question if what you're doing is right. The consequences of your actions remain right there in front of you. For a game built around stark, contrasting colours, the themes are full of grey areas. Any one of these characters could have been an NPC, some lonely traveller like yourself, but now they're just an empty shell, a hollow knight. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. Tune in next time where I hopefully talk about the ways in which Metroid Prime creates elements of fear. Continuing my slow, ongoing and changing series about the atmosphere of Metroid. Love you, bye.